Today is February 27th, and this is Joe Imbriano coming to you from Fullerton, California. And I wanted to talk to you about some of the issues plaguing our schools in Fullerton, one of which is a phenomenon at the Ladera Vista Junior High School located in Fullerton. It's commonly referred to as Ladera Vista School of the Arts. And a phenomenon that's taking place there right now is the Asian student population is actually wholesale engaged in racism against white Anglo-Saxon students and Hispanic students. And let me explain how and why. Apparently, the Asian component of that school is of the opinion that they are a superior breed of children. And they make comments like white people are trash, white people don't go to college, and Hispanics don't go to college and they're stupid, and that Asians are the smart people and Asians are the smartest, and only the Asians are the ones that'll get into the colleges. And this is backdrop against a school setting that is replete with forced microwave exposure that I've gone into. And there's a full deployment of iPads which are being used by all the students. I wanted to talk about the abject hypocrisy of these poor children. Now, these children are no doubt a product of their parents. And I think most of you are aware of how some parents push their children through these school systems on the road to nowhere. But nonetheless, they are of the delusion that it actually has some sort of meaning for their children. I could tell you that if you're in 7th grade and you are a racist, then you are probably very likely mentally ill already. And I don't make that claim lightly, folks. I want to talk about the Asian culture. I am married to a Korean, a very lovely and loving, godly woman, the likes of which I can only hope that you would encounter in your life, and may your child or daughter fall in love with a lovely, godly Korean or Asian person like the one I've found, male or female. But the point is the Asians have a horrific track record of managing their own countries. And I don't make that statement lightly either. My wife's family was from North Korea. And it used to take them days to walk across their property. They had, through the generations, amassed quite an amount of land that was growing rice and other crops. And one day, a tyrannical government turned on its people and confiscated everything they owned. You see, folks, Asians are notorious for having a statist slave mentality. And Asians have been notorious for going along with agendas and having an undying allegiance to the state. In North Korea, the population was allowed to be disarmed, and the people went along with it. Because Asians are masters of efficiency, but very little else. Whatever direction they're placed on, they're very adept at staying focused, staying on track, and carrying things to fruition. And most of the time, they have no idea what they're part of, as in the case with these children at Ladera Vista, and as was the case in North Korea, and as was the case in China, as was the case in Cambodia, as was the case in Vietnam, as was the case in Thailand, as was the case in the Philippines, as is the case today still in China. You know, I wonder if these Asian students would like to go back and fix their home countries. The tyrannical cesspools that they are so proud of. Like Korea, for example. Korea's in the midst of total destruction. not from the north, but from the south. Korea has literally the highest autism rate in the world. That's because Korea's god is Samsung. Korea's god is wireless technology. Korea's god is really Lucifer, folks. It's not Jesus Christ. Because Korea would not be blinded to the fact that their god is destroying humanity with the deployment of all of these microwave weapons. Samsung is the god of Korea. Samsung is behind the deployment of WiGig 60 gigahertz new generation Wi-Fi that broadcasts on the 60 gigahertz frequency. Samsung is involved with the deployment of these systems in our schools. There are a handful of schools that had a deployment of 60 gigahertz over the past year, and there were disastrous outcomes with the student population and the staff. And that was the intended focus, were the students and the staff's health effects. Some debilitating, some almost paralytic, some were paralytic, some sent people to the hospital unconscious, people were passing out, having all kinds of bizarre ailments. But back to this Asian superiority complex. You see, these children at Ladera Vista, who are totally fine with the disgusting drinking fountains and the rundown facilities, the overcrowded classrooms with terrible air quality, are racist because they think they're smarter than other people because of the color of their skin or the slant of their eyes. But the reality is, folks, people that think they're smarter than everybody else are actually dumber than everybody else, because let me tell you why. When you have a form of what I like to refer to as intellectual arrogance, God turns you over to blindness. And that blindness can be deadly. And let me explain how. You see, these people that think they know everything won't listen to anybody when they're told something that is in diametric opposition to what they've been brainwashed with. These Asians worship technology. These Asians worship academia. These Asians worship scientism. These Asians worship the government. Why is that? Well, it's because a lot of these Asians are involved with relying on the government to fund their businesses, to fund their education, to fund their livelihoods. Or they work for the government, or they work for the school district, or they work for the companies that work for the government. Because that's all they know how to do. They're notorious for following orders, folks. And that's really scary. Because people that think they know everything, that think they're better than everybody else, that follow orders blindly, are a recipe for totalitarianism. Let me give you an example of an Asian woman in Fullerton who was propped up and put into power by corrupt politicians. Her name's Young Kim. She's Korean. She actually, in spite of all of the information she was given, refused to meet with her constituents when she was in the assembly. In other words, when you have an assembly member and you have an issue you want to talk with your lawmaker, you have the right to make an appointment and meet with that lawmaker and sit down and discuss your concerns. Although it may be a short amount of time you're granted, you're still given that right, and you still should be afforded that right. Young Kim, when it came to the forced vaccination law, refused to meet with her constituents to discuss the issue. She went on to vote for forced vaccinations, even though her office was presented with the facts that vaccines have been used as sterilization tools, that she was presented with the facts that vaccinations, none of which have been tested for impairment of fertility, none of which have been tested for mutagenic potential, none of which have been tested for carcinogenic potential. And yet, not only did she refuse to meet with us, she refused to consider that information. And being the Asian that she is, lined up with the government and the pharmaceutical industry's interests and voted for that law, betraying her constituents and the children in the process. You cannot get any more Asian superiority North Korean than that. So back to these students at Ladera Vista that think they're so smart, that have filthy mouths, that cuss all the time. Where are these children headed? Well, if they really, really follow the direction of their parents that want them to become doctors or lawyers or people that are going to serve the system, you know, the people that destroy everybody's health with the drugs, the people that destroy people's lives by incorrectly and illegally implementing laws that should never be passed, and then enforcing those laws that ruin people's lives. There are many things that the products of our educational system are involved in. And the more intellectually and academically arrogant they are, the more dangerous they are. So these children at Ladera Vista that think they're so much smarter than the white people or the Hispanic people because they eat fish heads and garlic and know how to study till 2 o'clock in the morning and take Adderall, or headed to Troy High School if they follow their parents' orders. Troy High School is a high school in Fullerton that is really a pressure cooker with metal walls, literally. That school has sheet metal walls and wireless access points in each classroom that were designed to run 500 devices apiece. So these Koreans and Chinese and Asians that think they're so smart and think that they're better than everyone at Ladera Vista are actually going into a low-powered microwave oven academic pressure cooker. And once they're inserted in this oven, they will be force-fed godless atheism, scientism, homosexual propaganda, anti-gun, anti-American, anti-constitution, pro-liberal, pro-secular humanism, pro-Marxism, pro-communist, moral relativist, propaganda agenda, as they are microwaved by the staff. And usually what happens with these Asian students that think they're better than everybody else is they end up on a drug called Adderall, which is a stimulant drug. And one of the telltale signs of the use or abuse of this drug is the brown teeth. You heard me, folks. And also the really skinny waif look on these people. Now, like I said, I'm married to a Korean. I'm not racist. My wife and I are both college graduates. We are not people that take this situation lightly. However, when I hear of children that are being discriminated against and mocked and humiliated by students at a school because of the color of their skin, and staff does absolutely nothing about it, and the principal, Rhonda Smuckface, is just fine with this, along with Miss Smuckface being totally fine with the forced radiation of these children. And as Miss Smuckface is totally fine with teachers using classroom homework assignments to fundraise for drinking fountains that should be paid for by our tax dollars, I have a problem. Because these children are having a problem and the staff doesn't care. They just make the problem worse. So what is the solution, folks? What is the solution? There is a solution, and it's called telling the truth. You see, the United States was not founded by Asians, ladies and gentlemen. The United States was founded by white Europeans. The Revolutionary War was not fought by Koreans. The Revolutionary War was not fought by Chinese. It was not fought by Japanese. It was not fought by any of the Asian races. It was fought by European settlers that apparently, according to the Asian component at Ladera Vista High School, is intellectually superior to the white people. Now, folks, what you have here is an Asian supremacy ring that is operating in full public view at a public junior high school in the city of Fullerton. And I can assure you that all the staff is aware of this. And those that are not, that pretend it doesn't exist, are now aware, because you're going to be watching this video. The goal of this video is to expose the stupidity of those who think they're smarter than everybody else. Because the people that think they're the smartest, the ones that step on everybody else's hands trying to climb the ladder so they can get to the top, don't realize what's at the top. But I'll tell you, the prize for these people who have this disease of Asian superiority and intellectual arrogance and phony religion is a college degree and a job deep in the belly of a system that is destroying humanity. You know that the goal of medicine is to sicken and kill off the population. You know the goal of the technology companies is to sicken and psychologically enslave and destroy the population and amass massive amounts of wealth in the process. Why else, would these children be so addicted to these screens? They were designed to be addictive. And yet the Asians are in love with technology. They're drunk on technology. The technology is destroying them. They take melatonin at night to go to sleep and Adderall during the day because they're so drunk on wireless and their wireless gadgets. They can't be seen anywhere without them. Folks, the wireless devices ruin the sleep patterns by suppressing melatonin production. I've gone into this. And that is exactly why they've got a dope to go to bed and dope to stay awake. Some of these intellectually arrogant Asian superiority students are getting 2 and 3 hours of sleep. But they're getting perfect SAT scores. Now, you know what happens when you don't get enough sleep when you're growing up? You shrink your brain. And of course, you can train your brain to get a perfect SAT score. But very little else can be accomplished when you get older, because you know what? All that brain space has been taken up by junk, and you won't be able to think. And that is exactly why when you try to have a conversation with a doctor about some form of alternative treatment or about some other way of dealing with a chronic metabolic disorder, they look at you like you're crazy, because there's nothing left in their brain to process that information, because it has been cracked open and filled up with pharmaceutical industry eugenics propaganda, and then it's sealed back up and glued shut. But that is the system that the Asian superiority cabal wants to monopolize. Because to these people, it's all about the new car and the big house and the autistic children or the sterilized wife from all of the wireless exposure and the vaccines that they worship. It's all about the autistic children in their country. The rate of autism in Korea is approaching 50%. And because the Asian superiority gang, the Asian academic intellectual arrogance cabal with their parents have brought the medical tyranny to the United States. Dr. Pan is an Asian lawmaker. He is an Asian superiority member. And he is the author of the bill, SB 777. Excuse me, SB 277, the forced vaccination law. So this is what happens when people think they're better than everybody in junior high and they go on to high school or college. And then they get into office and they make laws that affect us all. Tyrannical laws, similar to the pit of hell tyrannical laws from their homeland. Excuse me, like Dr. Pan's China. China is a hellhole, folks, where they used to cut women's uteruses out and do forced medical procedures in vans in the streets. They murdered millions of their own people, hundreds of millions of their own people, disarmed them, starved them, marched them through the deserts, killed them off. Because Asian people don't know any better, folks. Because Asian people are slaves. They worship the state. They're not smarter than you and I. They're not smarter than anybody. They're just as stupid as the rest of you who fall for the lies and disinformation of corrupt criminal governments that seek to oppress and obliterate, euthanize, and destroy their very own people. The problem is they've brought it to the United States. And now what they're doing is they're carrying out the same programs from their homeland into this country, folks. Don't get me wrong. I love kimchi. I eat fish heads. I love Korean food. It's delicious. I love Japanese food. I love sushi. I also like Mexican food, Italian food. But you know what I don't love? I don't love the tyranny that these people have brought to this country. And the tyranny that the children of these people are going to ensure continues. You see, we have a duty, ladies and gentlemen, to tell the truth. And we have a duty to teach our children. And one of the things that we have to teach our children is to open your eyes and look around and don't believe everything you're told or taught, and to question things. The problem with this Asian superiority cabal at Ladera Vista Junior High is they're too young to do that. But one thing they're not too young to do is realize that they're wrong. My hope is that whoever listens to this video will open their eyes to the fact that we are all equal. Our blood is all red. We are all created in the image of God. And the only thing that's different about us is the mindset that has been inculcated into the populations by their respective governments during the formative years. And what is frightening to me is the systems that have led to tyrannical oppression and genocide that have been in operation all over the world in these countries has now apparently become the norm in what was once a bastion of freedom throughout the world, the United States. And these children are being shaped and formed by staff and administrators and principals and people that write the curriculum and the superintendents that allow for the curriculum and purchase the curriculum that teaches children that we shouldn't have borders, that we should all be forced vaccinated, that we should all trust everything a doctor tells us, and that we should believe all the lies in the science books about how we got here and what we're living on. Ladies and gentlemen, look at your children tonight. Look them in the eyes. and ask them, do they really believe they're better than everybody else? Because at the end of the day, folks, in the eyes of the government, we are all really just a bunch of wild hogs that need to be culled. Don't let your children be part of that program, folks. This is Joe Imbriano reporting to you once again under a chemtrailed sky in Southern California. That's right, folks. You heard me. Geoengineering still going on even after the rain. Open your eyes, folks. You have no idea how much is depending upon that fact taking place.